Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today I've got a subscriber question that I want to talk about, and specifically the question is, what are the best baits to use for fishing really fast moving water like sets of rapids or just areas where the current is ripping? And you know, I've got a really specific set of baits that I utilize, and I've won a lot of money fishing these areas at the local level. It's always something I look at. You know, I think pretty much anywhere you're at in the country, you've got creeks and streams and small rivers that flow into the lakes or the reservoirs or the larger rivers that if you go far enough up them, you will hit a set of rapids or hit riffles in areas where the current is really raging. And what a lot of people don't realize is in the summer, this becomes very, very good areas to fish because it's cooler water and it's very well oxygenated water. When you have the water running through those rapids, it's creating oxygen, and it's creating higher levels of oxygen, which is what the fish are looking for in the summer months a lot of times. So it makes them high percentage areas to fish. The problem is they can be very difficult to get to in a boat without doing damage, and they're just areas that you got to work to get to, whether that means you get out of the boat and wade to them or you hike through the woods to get to them. It can be tough to fish, but when you find the areas, they can be absolutely fantastic fishing because the fish are there and they're relatively untouched. A lot of people aren't willing to put the work in to get to them, but when you get to them, there are baits that you should utilize to maximize your efficiency. And I've got a set of baits here that I always have tied on when I'm fishing rapids. And really, for me, what it comes down to is they need to be baits that will generate strikes, stay in the strike zone, and not get stuck. Because a lot of times you have fast water that if you use the wrong bait, you're always going to be getting stuck, and it just makes for a miserable day in the water. So the first thing is topwater baits. Topwater baits can be huge performers. You got to realize in shallow water, in rivers, a lot of times the bass are always looking up to the surface because there is things that are falling in the river coming by, and a lot of times they're only sitting in 2 foot of water. So a topwater bait is right there at their eye level anyways. So the one that I really like is a Chopo, a Berkeley Chopo. This bait, for a couple of reasons, is phenomenal. One, because when you cast out there and your line is being pulled downstream, the bait's still running fine. It's just getting pulled in a boat. Versus if you're throwing, say, a popper or a walking bait, it becomes really hard to work those baits when the line is being pulled downstream. A bait that just needs to be straight retrieved, like this Chopo, is ideal for fast moving water. So a topwater is really key. Specifically, I like the Chopo style bait. You can use other topwaters, they just become much harder to use when you have that fast moving water. My second favorite bait is a lipless, like this Berkeley War Pig. Lipless baits are amazingly weedless when it comes to fishing around rock, and they work fantastic when they're getting pulled in fast water. So again, it's similar to the Chopo. When you've got a big bow in your line because the current's pulling it downstream, this thing is just rattling along, bouncing off rocks, doing what it needs to do. I like a lipless better than a crankbait because a crankbait is wanting to dive into the rocks. The lipless is just coming through the water column. If you put a crankbait on, you will get stuck a ton just because it's wanting to get down and dive into those rocks, which is not what you want in the fast current because the current will pull the bait under a rock and get you stuck all the time. The next bait's similar to that in that it's a spinner bait. This is a War Eagle spinner bait. A spinner bait is a great bait, again, for casting into the eddies and just working through the water column. The blades are always going to be moving. Because you're straight retrieving it, you're going to be able to keep a relatively tight line even in fast moving water, and it creates a lot of disturbance. And a lot of times what the fish are feeding on in those rapid sections are minnows that are tucked up behind eddies and behind some of the rolling water. So a spinner bait is a phenomenal bait for fishing in rapid sections. The next two choices are kind of what you'd want to work in a slower moving area. So those first 3 baits will really generate a lot of strikes from really active fish. But as we all know, in these rapid sections, you've got eddies and slower water areas where the inactive fish are sitting. So if you've worked an area over and you think you've caught the active fish, that's when you want to slow down and try fishing some of those areas you think the fish are holding in while they're waiting for food to be brought to them, or while they're just in an inactive period. So I've got 2. The first is a jig. You know, I like a smaller compact jig like this Dirty Jigs Luke Clausen compact pitch and jig. The idea with a jig is you know what areas you want to throw this into. So if you've got a big rock creating an eddy, you're going to pitch this into the eddy, and that's where you're hoping the fish is going to be. What I like about a jig better than, say, a craw bait or some Texas style plastic is when your bait's coming by that rock, the current will grab the whole bait, and it's a big jig, so it'll pull it. But when you get to that eddy, you have more mass here, and the bait gets pulled into the eddy better than a Texas style bait would. So that's the number one thing. This bait will get sucked back into where that fish is sitting better than a Texas rig bait because there's more mass. The other is because you have more mass, it's easier for the fish to locate this bait. And a lot of times when you're talking about river fishing, you're talking about, you know, baits that, or water that's a little bit darker. So you want to create a little bit more mass. And that's why I love a jig like a compact jig. It just seems to work wonders. I've caught a lot of really big fish doing this on a jig. So the next is then just some sort of Ned Rig, whatever your favorite little Ned Rig is. The key though is you want to use a head that is light enough that you're not going to get stuck. You know, and that's one other nice thing with the jig. The jig's a bigger, bulkier bait, so it doesn't find the cracks in the rocks as well as, you know, a Texas rig bait would. So you want to go, you know, with the jig because it's more efficient. The Ned, which you'd go, well, this is smaller, it's going to find every crack. The key here, guys, is you need to use a head that is light enough it's not going to fall into the crack. So I like to go with like a 1/10 ounce. So again, you're throwing this into the rapids and kind of letting the water literally just bounce it down through the rocks. And it's so light that it can't fall down into the cracks because the current is keeping it moving. And the key is you want to use it at the speed of the current. So you don't want it to be too heavy where it's being slowed down, like it's not moving with the current, but you don't want it to be too light where it's moving way faster than the current and you can't get the bait in the position. This is going to fluctuate based on the river that you're fishing and the current speed. There may be times you want to throw a 1/10 ounce. There may be times you need to throw a 1/5 or a 1/6 ounce to get your bait to fall into those eddies in the manner that you want. But a small finesse Ned Rig is definitely a good bait to have when river fishing in really fast moving water like a rapid section. So guys, those are my 5 baits. When I'm going, there's a lot of local lakes here that have these rapid areas. When I'm fishing the tournaments, those are the 5 baits I have tied on. I may rotate colors, but those are the baits that I've got tied on, and they are extremely efficient. You don't spend your time breaking many baits off because they come through good and they attract a lot of fish. You know, you get a lot of bites on all of those. So find yourself some fast moving water, some of these small creeks, head out to them, pull your boat up to the base of them, get out and walk up the river and fish the shoals and the different kind of sets of rapids that are in them. And I think you'll find that you'll catch some really nice fish. You'll have a ball doing it, and it's super fun to do on a hot summer day. So give it a try. And if you've got kids, it's another great thing to do because the kids love just kind of walking around on the banks of the river. But it's definitely one of the things I always look forward to in the summer months. So give those baits a try. I assure you guys they work great in super fast moving water. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned. New tips and tricks coming out every day.